listened to, which is Ari Kaplan himself explaining what's going on with Pension Coalition. Then Bonnie will talk about our political strategy. When we went around our second tour last fall, we talked about two veins, one vein being legal and the other vein being political. So Bonnie will talk about what actions we've taken to date and what are our next steps. Then I'll come in and talk about finances, the status, the operational needs, and the legal needs. And then we ask you to wait until the presentation is over so that you can ask questions, and we'll have a question and answer period. And then we'll bring this to a close. Bonnie.
Cliff has a cold, so we nicely made sure I have a mic that he hasn't used. I have to travel with him in the car, but I don't want the germs. Our mandate. Well, we were basically a group that got struck and kind of grew over time, and our mandate was to gather information from as many sources as we could to inform people as much as we could find out on what was happening with our pensions. And sometimes it's been said that we're spreading misinformation, and I want to assure you that we are passing the information that we're able to glean and what we're able to understand from either our past experiences or for the reading the documentation and making interpretation. So each of you had a contract with government, and that is an individual contract, and that's the contract that's been broken. We can't negotiate on your behalf because you basically have that contract one-on-one, but we can advocate on your behalf, and we can work to try to do some collaborative work on your behalf, and we'll speak a little bit about that when it gets to the legal case. We collaborated with other groups, the unions, PIPs, and we have some representation here today, and CUPE. We have advocated with them. We've worked along with the teachers as well. And when we went around the province, as Cliff said last time, it was a 96% vote that what we needed to do was not to give in, but we needed to press, try to get the government to understand that they should do this on a go-forward basis, that they should not be touching the vested benefits of retirees. And we all know, though, that the bill came down, and which did do that, and Cyril will talk to you about that. And then the percentage was we need to go legal. And that's where we are today, and we need to talk about what that means and where we're going from here. And we have these sessions to account to you. In May, we all got a nice little letter which said there were going to be some changes to our pension. And a lot of people looked at that and they thought, well, there's another one of those little letters we get now and then. And it didn't pay a lot of attention, but it did say that changes that would be made would be on a go-forward basis. And we know that is not what has happened. But when a number of people, the Cyrils of this world and such that had more knowledge on pensions and the detail of pensions saw some of the wording, the antenna went up and the red flags went up. So a group started to meet and they started to raise questions. And then we did what was called sort of a pyramid way of trying to touch people. We do not have a membership list. We cannot get the names and addresses of the retirees in this province of New Brunswick from anybody. So what we try to do is I know you, you know somebody, and somebody knows, you send it to your group, we'll send it to our group, and that's how we work to try to get the message out. And so in February of 2013, a coalition was established, and that's the coalition that we now know as the Pension Coalition of New Brunswick, or New Brunswick Pension Coalition. Did our first tour, and when right after we went out, as you recall, the government came out right after us and explained what they were doing. I'm not sure there was any intent to do that, but because we started, they did go around and they went to all the same places and they explained what was going to happen. And when we were meeting with the government, because we met with the government, we met with MLAs, we met with the Premier, we asked for, never have we said that there isn't a need for changes in pensions. there probably is a need for changes in the way pensions have been done over the number of years, because things have changed. The way of accounting has changed, the rules that are on it have changed, the aging, people are living longer, all those things have changed. And so there probably are things that need to be done, but we said those things should be done within our act. It should be done within the PSSA, and we said that we wanted a defined benefit program. We did not want defined contribution, we wanted defined benefit. And so, but when we met with the Minister of Finance, he basically said, no, trains left the station. We have this model called a shared risk plan, and that's what's going to be. And in fact, it's a done deal. The shared risk plan is where we're going to move everybody to. And so then that was where we stood at the time. So no consultation, no transparency. There was, we believe, some of the delays that were affected, and some of the things that we did get in Bill 11 were because we kept asking questions. And at one of the provincial tours, I said to the minister who was presenting and the MLA that was there with him, I said, it's really interesting. I think it was the Bathurst session. I said, everyone we go to, you answer the question we raised at the last time. And so we find out a little bit more. And we go to another session and there's another question and we find out a little bit more. So we have, they didn't put the implementation in until December, so that was a little bit of trying to get some things changed. And Cyril will explain some of the things we got in terms of the base. That's a good thing. We've had joint press conferences with PIPS and with CUPE, but with everything that we've tried to do, in December 11th we've got Bill 11, and Cyril will explain what Bill 11 does, what its impact is to you. But maybe before we go on, I do, in the other sessions, I have been just making a comment from the retired teachers. Are there some retired teachers here today? There are a few. Good. Thank you very much for coming out. We have had super great support from retired teachers. They've been to our sessions. They came to the legislature when we were sitting in the legislature as the bill was being discussed. They came to the demonstration, and that was an awesome event. We had over 3,000 people there, and it was amazing, the numbers that turned out. A lot of teachers there. As you know, the government has, when they did Bill 11, they turned their attentions to the teachers, which was kind of foregone that might happen. And that the Federation and the NBTA have struck a deal. The bill was actually introduced yesterday. It's called Bill 85. It's the Teachers Pension Plan Act, and it is on the website if any of you want to go on and have a look at it. And it does explain what was agreed to. We can't say negotiated, because in fact pensions cannot be negotiated by virtue of the Labor Relations Act, but it does say what is happening. So the teachers that we've been meeting and have been getting in contact with us have said, okay, what about us, retired teachers? We as retired teachers didn't really feel that we have anyone to turn to. We're kind of left out there. So we did ask our legal counsel. So we said, how, and I'll read it just because I want to make sure that it's fully understood. How can our success in court help our retired teacher friends and allies? And he said that once he has an opportunity to read the new teacher pension legislation, which was tabled, there may well be a way for retired teachers to benefit from our legal proceedings. So I just want teachers to know, the retired teachers to know, that we're hoping you'll stay with us, that you'll stay tuned, that you'll stay involved with us, and that we do have your interests in mind, and we're trying to see. But as we were struck on the PSSA, and we have to see how do you deal with that in a go-forward basis. So just from a retiree point of view, we are working with our lawyer to see how our two organizations, or not organizations, but the retired teachers and the retired public servants can continue to work together. Okay, so.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'll use a disease-free mic as well. When you came in, you should have received a package of information. In that package, there are three things that I'm going to reference. One of them is called the Guarantee of Base Benefits. It's a single page. One of them is a table of escalation factors, and it's just mostly all numbers. And the third one is a comparison of the Public Service Superannuation Act, our old pension plan, and the Public Service Shared Risk Pension Plan, our new pension plan. The first three items on that list are the main areas that affect retirees. The rest of the table affects active employees. They're affected to a much greater degree than retirees. That's because we have given our service to the government in return for the pension that we thought we were going to get. So Bill 11 basically did away with the Public Service Superannuation Act. And it attempts to, and I use the word attempts because there are ex-lawyers in our group that will argue it didn't do what it attempted to do because it wasn't done in the right way. I'm not going to argue that point. I feel as though I got put in a new pension plan. But what the one-pager does that you have is it explains how the base benefit is guaranteed. That is the amount you were receiving on January the 1st, 2014. So that includes that 0.96% escalation that was granted on January the 1st. So the legislation says that you will never receive any less than that amount. The pension plan itself does allow that amount to be reduced, but Bill 11 says the government must make up any reduction from general revenues of the province. So you might ask, how is that legislated guarantee any better than the legislated guarantee that was in the public service plan? Because that was a legislated guarantee as well. Well, chances are it's no better. If a future government wanted to do away with that guarantee, they could do away with that guarantee. So it attempts to put all existing pensioners into the Public Service Shared Risk Plan. It also, if you happen to be one of the employees that retired under an early retirement package, it protects that base as well. And that's all explained on the one-pager, and you have to basically read this one-pager in conjunction with Bill 11, because those are the clauses that it pertains to. Also, Bill 11 went to great length to give everyone involved in the conversion immunity from legal prosecution. Without that immunity contained in Bill 11 and the immunity contained in the Pension Benefits Act, the government could be sued for doing what they did. So those clauses in the Pension Benefits Act and Bill 11 basically make theft legal. But now the future base, that is the escalation that you're going to get January the 1st, 2015. That is conditional indexing. You will get indexing January the 1st, 2015. It might be the full CPI or it might not. But on January the 1st, 2016, they may claw some of that back. So future indexing is not guaranteed. And it does not automatically go on to the base that's guaranteed. So cost of living is conditional on fund performance. Over the next, every year, economic scenarios over the following 20-year period. And the way the shared risk plan is designed, it is designed to provide or to target providing at least 75% cost of living increase over the next 20-year period. So you might say, what's that mean? And that's illustrated on this one pager here. Now, this here tracks escalation for the last 17 years, from the period 1995 to 2012. Over that 17-year period, we calculated, Liz actually calculated it. It's for a $30,000 pension and for a $40,000 pension. And this here table assumes no escalation is granted. So at the end of 17 years, your pension would be $42,500. But because no escalation was guaranteed, it's only $30,000. So if you wanted to know what it was if 75% escalation was received, then you could just take a simple 75% of 42,500. So it will be substantially less over an extended period of time. If you add up all the income shortfalls, that is the escalation that is conditional in the future, on a $30,000 pension, it adds up to $113,000. So that would be $113,000 worth of pension that is put at risk, that is conditional. On the $40,000 pension, it adds up to just over $151,000. So it's a substantial amount of money. $151,000, if you took 75% of that, it's less than $100,000. So it does make a difference. And these are at, you can see, the highest inflation rate is 2.8. Now, if we ever get back to the period of the 80s when inflation was running customarily at 7, 8, 9, 10%, it makes a marked difference in pensioners' income. The final thing on the previous slide is that there's no guarantee anymore of pension. The government has basically withdrawn their sponsorship of the plan. The plan is being administered by a board of trustees. Currently, it's an interim board of trustees. It's comprised of 6 individuals, 3 appointed from the labor movement and 3 appointed by government. Of the 3 that are appointed by government, 1 must be a pensioner. That pensioner is Ernie McKinnon, who used to head up the Investment Management Corporation and was a former deputy minister. He's not there to represent pensioners. He just happens to be a pensioner that was appointed. In the future, the interim board will be replaced by a board of up to 10 individuals, 5 from the labor movements and 5 appointed by government. The wording in the future is that of the 10 appointed by government, 1 must be a pensioner, but that pensioner can be a pre-conversion pensioner or someone who retires next month, or someone who perhaps retires in September after the election. Because don't forget, MLAs are now in this pension plan. So it could be a retired MLA who is the pensioner or a defeated MLA. The Superintendent of Pensions, that's the Financial Services Commission, an arm's length body. The Superintendent of Pensions is now the supervisory authority that will oversee the administration of this pension plan. And due to the design of the pension plan and due to the actuarial work that has to go into it on an annual basis and the complexity of the pension plan, increased administrative costs will be borne by the plan, increased legal costs will be borne by the plan, and administration costs and actuarial costs. It's a very, very complex plan. The Public Service Superannuation Act used to be about, probably 1/4 of an inch thick. The new pension plan documents fill a 3-ring binder. Like, it is very complex. Next.
All right. The diseased person is up now. So, in regards to legal, Ari Kaplan of Koski Minsky was hired, retained by Pension Coalition NB last August. And the first task was to provide a legal opinion to the coalition to say, do we have a case to go forward? Because there's no sense in proceeding and continuing the work of the coalition if we don't have a legal stance. Well, it was determined that we have a legal stance to go forward. So with our technical team that Cyril sits on and former lawyers, they're now technical people, but they have all the legal knowledge, but they're not practicing lawyers. And we have 4 of them that sit on Pension Coalition and work on a technical committee. So together with our legal counsel, with Ari Kaplan, there are 3 ways to argue our case legally. One is a notice of action, and that requires discovery hearings, legal motions. It's a very lengthy and very expensive process. Another one is administrative tribunals under the Pension Benefit Act. It's faster, and we can potentially stop the proceedings, and we'll talk about that. And then the other one is a notice of application. It's the same thing as a notice of action, except it's much cheaper and it's faster. You prepare your own affidavits, and there's no discovery hearings required. So, administrative tribunal. What we did with our technical committee and with Ari Kaplan is we sent a legal letter. So there was a lot of work put together to produce this legal letter with all of the issues that we believe needed to be addressed by the Superintendent of Pensions. That letter was sent as soon as Bill 11 was enacted in December. We forwarded that letter to the Superintendent of Pension, basically requesting that the plan called Public Service Shared Risk Pension Plan not be registered. It's on a charter-based reason to delay registration based on discrimination against us seniors who are retirees with vested rights that are being taken away from us. And that's against the law. And that was proven by Quinn versus New Brunswick, and Ari Kaplan was the individual that fought that case and won. But government still did what government wanted to do because they have the power in the legislature to do it. To date, we have not received a decision from the Superintendent of Pension. Now, we were told that by April 1, we would have a decision. To this date, we have not yet heard. The superintendent indicated that a decision would be provided in the near future. Well, we don't know when that future is. We're still waiting. However, our expectation as a coalition is that they will register the plan. Don't forget, conversion from PSSA to the shared risk was January 1, 2014. We're now in May, and last month, contribution rates already went up for the actives, but the plan's not yet registered. The second action that we have now taken is a notice of application. And the purpose behind the notice of application, it's to strike down the legislation that's called Bill 11. In other words, we're trying to get it repealed and bring back the PSSA and make the changes within the PSSA that government wants to make. Now, that's to be initiated in June 2014. There's a lot of work by legal counsel to put this application together. And the process is now beginning. And it should be submitted sometime in June. We must act quickly, otherwise our intent shall be questioned. Absolutely. If we keep talking about going legal, but we don't do anything, you're going to question our motives, and government will sit back and laugh and basically say, they're just talking. They're not really acting. Well, we are doing it. We are going forward. The election campaign gives us added impetus. And what's the realistic cost? $200,000 to get our notice of application to be heard by a lawyer and hopefully get a positive ruling on our behalf, which is our intent. We already have one win. The win, Quinn versus New Brunswick, under Justice Grant, and he basically said that it was illegal, and Eric Kaplan won that case. But government gave themselves an immunity clause, as was expressed earlier, and they still do what they want to do as far as legislation is concerned. We have raised to date, out of that $200,000, $60,000. And the next government, because the decision will not be provided to us, the ruling will not be given to us prior to the next election. It'll take a while. It'll be in the fall, hopefully before Christmas, that we will get a ruling from the judge. Now I'll call on Bonnie to come forward and give you a short bio on Eric Kaplan. And then we have a video, 5-minute video. And please pay very good attention. It's very important. He's a very smart fella.
We feel very fortunate that we were able to get Eric Kaplan. We just didn't go out to get him. We put out a request for proposals to a number of firms, a lot of them in the Atlantic area and in New Brunswick. But it was surprising that there were a lot of people who had to declare conflict of interest in New Brunswick. So that's why we ended up with a lawyer from Toronto, Eric Kaplan, and he is with, as was said, Koski Minsky. And he is really known as the author of a lot of material on pension law. And he has written a book and co-authored another one on that. And he also was in this last year named Lawyer of the Year for Employee Benefits Law in Toronto by some of the best lawyers in Canada. And his whole focus is pensioners, and pension funds. And he's gone as far as the Supreme Court to push those cases. So we're very pleased, and given that he'd been here in New Brunswick with the Quinn case, he also knew some of the New Brunswick content. And as Cliff has said, because we have some former lawyers on our committee, we have some very engaging discussions with him because they know the right questions to ask.
Hi, my name is Ari Kaplan, and I'm a lawyer, and I've been retained by the Pension Coalition New Brunswick to represent pensioners and retirees in respect of the indexing on your public service pension plan. Last December, the legislature of the province of New Brunswick passed legislation called Bill 11. What Bill 11 did was convert your pension plan from a statutory guaranteed pension plan protected by the consolidated revenues of the province of New Brunswick into something called a shared risk plan. The most significant distinction between your old plan and the new plan is that under the old plan, you were guaranteed cost of living indexing increases every year after you've retired. Under the new model, that indexing is not guaranteed. It's called conditional indexing. That's a major change to your pension benefits. People who have worked for 20, 30, even 40 years in some cases had an expectation that every year that you worked, you would be entitled to a cost of living increase at the appropriate time when you retired. The conditional nature of the new shared risk plan puts that at risk. I believe that the government did not have the legal authority to pass legislation to unilaterally take away your guaranteed indexing. All legislation that's passed by any government in any legislature in the province is not unfettered. All legislation has to conform to what we call the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And what that says is that government cannot unilaterally discriminate against certain demographics in society without just cause. In this case, we say the government did not have just cause to change your vested benefits that you've earned through your work. The government has to comply with the rule of law in the workplace. And by passing legislation the way they did, they've done what no private employer in the country has the legal authority to do. The reason why the government is able to make this change and not a private employer is because the government has the power of the legislature behind it. It can implement legislation subject to the will of the people and subject also to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. From a legal perspective, if the government is going to be making the argument that it can't afford to pay you the indexing that you earned in your workplace, it has to look at all of the different revenues associated and expenditures associated with caring for you in your old age. Because a government is not just your employer, the government is your state. A government has a duty to balance its budget, but the government also has a duty to care for its people, particularly in older age. The problem I have is that Bill 11 is not implementing what was recommended in the government's own report. Specifically, the government said that benefit changes will only apply in the future. They said that each retiree will keep what he or she has already accrued under the plan pre-conversion. The government specifically says that vested amounts as well as indexation already granted to current retirees are retained. However, that's not what they've done in Bill 11. They've made all of the indexing that you've already earned conditional in the future. People who are retired have little advantage available to be able to replace the income lost by the lost indexing. Unlike a 30-year-old who still has 30 years plus of work ahead of him or her, somebody who's 70 has already been through that cycle. And that's what makes seniors different from every other employee in the plan and different from every other taxpayer. And that's why I believe that this legislation unjustifiably discriminates against seniors. You've already spent your years putting in your employment, paying for your pension, paying off the mortgage. And now at the end of the day, at the time in your life where you least have the ability to replace that income, you're being asked to take a gamble. And I believe in all of the circumstances that that does not run in conformity to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In conclusion then, 1, the government has passed Bill 11, which is legislation that eliminates your guaranteed indexing increases. 2, you have the legal right to challenge that decision, even though it's been made in legislation. 3, we're waiting for a decision of the Superintendent of Pensions in respect of the legal action that has already been started by the New Brunswick Pension Coalition. 4, after a decision comes out, there may be any one of a number of legal routes that we go to before we get to hear it before a judge. 5, litigation is expensive and it takes some time. There's no guarantee this will be completed before the next provincial election in September. It may take a little while, but that should not discourage you from exercising your rights, because if you don't exercise them now, when? Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today about your pension indexing. I know this is stressful, and that's why we're making this video, to update and inform you as to what the New Brunswick Pension Coalition is doing for you from a legal perspective to help advance your rights. We will update you further as we have more information. Thank you very much.
As Cliff said initially, there are two sides to, or two streams in our activity. One is our legal stream that Ari has explained how we're going to proceed on that. The other is a political stream. And we all know there's an election coming in September, and so there's some definite activities that we need to do to keep the pressure on that this is an important issue and it's an issue that needs to be dealt with. We've attended the sittings in the legislature along with our teacher colleagues and some actives. We held the demonstration that I spoke about. We've met with the political parties, all political parties in the past, and we've had many of you write letters, emails, and articles in the paper, and have to say that there are more articles written than ever get published, particularly in the TJ. So we don't have very good track record. So when you see some of those publications, know there are probably 3 more behind it that never got published. We have sent a motion to all the political parties, and that motion is in your package, but I would like to go over it, because for the actives in the crowd, I would like to explain that we are not narrow in our focus. Basically, what we've said to all the political parties is that we want their party to support pension changes that deal with the pension needs of all New Brunswick citizens, not only public servants, in an open and transparent approach. And 2, to ensure the contractual obligation to all former employees are honored, as the Supreme Court of Canada has reaffirmed that pensions are actually deferred salary and owed to the employees. 3, to work with both public and private sectors using an inclusive consultative approach on the need for and direction of all pensions to ensure pension benefits for future and past employees are secure and protected. And 4, to re-examine the imposition of shared risk on the other employee groups, in particular the former members and pensioners of the PSSA, where a minority of bargaining employees who were members of the PSSA agreed to bind the more than 30,000 covered by its terms. And last, to ensure the investment of all public pension funds remain with NBIMC and clear competency-based criteria for appointment. Now, what does some of this mean? What it means is that we feel that the attention has been directed at the public servants. We know that there are pension changes needed. We also know that New Brunswick's fiscal situation is not the best in the world. But we believe there are other ways to deal with this than the way that it has been dealt with. If you look at number 4 there, when we talk about re-examine the imposition on the other employee groups and on former members, because we're all, whether you're active or not, we were former members of the PSSA. When they converted it, we became now under another plan. And it says a minority of bargaining employees. Actually, what those union groups did was they signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. And when they signed that Memorandum of Understanding, they represent very small numbers under PSSA, but they agreed that they would now become the owners of and the controllers of our funds. So they actually are making the decisions around our funds and telling NBIMC how they should deal with our funds. And it's a very small group of people who are dealing with the many dollars that we've put in as a group over time. So we believe that the government needs to honor our contracts, but we also believe that the shared risk plan is not necessarily the plan that needs to be there for actives as well. So we've done a motion to all political parties, and we did a resolution at the Liberal Convention, and we've had NDP, Green, and People's Alliance support our motion. At the Liberal Convention, I was there. There were 2 motions that were on the floor, and it was the only motion where one of the MLAs, Roger Melanson, got up and spoke in favor of the resolution, and it was supported by the group unanimously, both resolutions, and in that was the clause on ensuring that the contractual obligations were honored. But that is only a resolution on the floor. That doesn't make it a done deal. That's only the first step. You have to get it into a platform, and that's where the pressure still needs to keep coming. What we need to do is we'll be making a map of all ridings and all the candidates that are in the riding. And we're asking our regional contact, and Guy is here if you want to just stand up. He's going to be at the back of the room at the end of the meeting, and if you would like to help him and be part of that political activity. He would like your name and your email address, because what we need to do, our regional contacts all need to contact the candidates. We've got to make sure that those candidates are committed to the fact that pension changes, as we see them, needs to be an important item in the platform. And we need to see in the platform that they support that the vested rights of retirees are protected. And there will be regional events. Some people like and some people don't like barbecue circuit, but that will happen here when the House sort of prorogues. So some people need to attend those functions. We need to keep the issue of pension changes in the fore and make it a need for political parties to say what they're going to do about it after, if they are the ones who are successful at the election. So that's where we are on the political strategy. As I say, none of it is a done deal. All parties are playing lip service at this point in time, but we need to get some real firm commitments in platforms that will probably come out once the House recesses. Just one other thing in what Cliff and Cyril said. Don't forget that COLA is an important thing. We've all talked about it and tried to reassure, and we do know that there are a number of our members that are retirees who believe it was guaranteed at 75%. It was not guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed is the base, as it was January 1. As I said to the other groups, I show my age, but you used to be able to buy pop and chips for 15 cents. You could 10 cents for a bottle of pop and 5 cents for a bag of chips, and I would ask you, where can you do that today? And that means then if the pop goes up, then the chips go up, and you still only have your 15 cents to pay for it, you have to dip into other things that are part of that small envelope of money in order to have, or decide not to have, the pop and chips. So that COLA was meant to keep all of us going forward and keeping pace with, as the prices of things go up. Taxes go up, insurance goes up, your price of goods go up, and if you're dealing with the same envelope, you have to get that money from just within that envelope. So COLA is not something to pay just a little bit of attention to. It's a major factor.
Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, now we're going to talk about finances. So to date, we've raised $90,000 for coalition expenses. So we have an operating side and we have a legal side, okay? So for operating, when we went around the province and we did the bucket parade, so far, to date, we've raised $90,000 in the bucket parade, excuse me, in the bucket parades. People gave money on PayPal or sent some checks in. And that was up until September 23rd, I think, or 25th. September 25th. Anything after that we received went to legal, okay? To date, we have spent $68,000 of the $90,000. And remember, our expenses of going on the road are not covered by the coalition. It comes out of our own pockets. But we've done 2 regional tours, and in doing the tours, there's advertising on radio and papers, there's website, there's computer, there's photocopying and supplies, there's meeting space, and there's telephone and P.O. box. Just this tour alone will cost in the vicinity of $15,000 just for the tour. That's not any administrative costs. So it's not cheap. All this equipment and the gentleman in the back taping us cost money. In the bank, therefore, we have $22,000 right now. And our accounting person, Liz Abraham in the back, has figured out, when doing the financial statements and looking at what our costs have been, has projected that between now and December 2014, so the end of the calendar year, we need $45,000 on the operating side. We already have 22 in the bank, so we need 23 more. So from the tour, we will be collecting money we will be encouraging people to send some money via PayPal or by check. But the tour itself, we believe we can raise sufficient funds to carry us to the end of the year. If there's any money beyond the $23,000 in the buckets, well, then that'll go to the legal campaign. And as you know, as far as the legal campaign is concerned, anything after September 25th last year has all gone to legal, okay? And anything that you have right now within the envelopes that are circulating, I'm going to go to the next page. As far as legal is concerned, I indicated we needed $200,000 total. We've raised $60,000 to date. We have spent $30,000. We got a legal opinion, and there's a legal letter that was sent to the Superintendent of Pensions. There's been a tremendous amount of conference calls with Ari Kaplan and our technical committee. There's been a lot of research done by them, and that cost $30,000 so far. So $200,000 doesn't go very far, but we believe, based on what Ari is telling us, that that'll be sufficient to be heard before a judge. So we must raise, from a legal perspective, $140,000 in order to make up the $200,000. So right now we're going to do the bucket parade that we've been doing all along throughout our tours, and you have within your packages that were given this morning an envelope. So you can use that envelope if you want to give some money legal today. You want to write a check, put that check in that envelope. But money you put in the bucket will be for operational. And we would like to see, $20 in that vicinity from each of you, because we need to reach that $23,000 in this tour. And then the legal is separate. You may want to wait till you get home if you choose to send your checks, or you can do them right here today, and it'd be greatly appreciated. And
just the return. If we don't use.
Okay, and as we've indicated before, and we definitely mentioned this in September during the tour, any amount of money that we do not use on a legal perspective, since you have given your name, address, and in some cases your telephone number and email, we have that information. If we do not use the full $200,000, there will be a return of the funds on a prorated basis. So if you give $100 and there's 20,000 left, but on a prorated basis, you'll receive X amount. Okay? So that's the way we're going to do our collections. Please don't be shy. This is your opportunity to ask questions, get some clarification.
Okay, there's
anything that concerns you. Go ahead, sir.
Question back here. Okay, question? I think it's on. No?
No, just a second. He's going to put it on.
You're talking about the $200,000 legal fees, and that will cover Mr. Kaplan's application to the court whenever that comes about. Even if we win that, the judge rules in our favor, the province is going to appeal that. There's going to be a tremendous amount more legal fees needed than $200,000.
I guess if I was to answer that question from my heart, I am a person whose cup is always half full, or I like to think of myself as that most of the time. I would really, really like to think by going legal and showing that we're not afraid to go legal, and putting pressure on the political parties, that somebody between now and December will decide that what has happened to us is wrong, and they will change it. And that will come politically, but because we've gone legally as well. So I think we need to keep the political pressure on, and we need to do the legal and do it, be committed that we'll go as far as we can. If we show that we are not willing to do it, we might as well just fold tent and go. You're right, if it goes to the Supreme Court, it's probably going to take a lot more money than that to go there, but you have to crawl before you walk, and this is where we're going to go now, and hopefully with enough people showing that they're not happy with what happened, and a party that will commit to protecting our rights and going back and discussing, then it will be gone away by December. Does that?
Just a very quick question. Anyway, I'll speak loud. I'm curious who the superintendent of pensions is. Is he a judge? And who pays his salary?
Okay, Cyril, you want to tackle that one? It's a she.
Yeah, the superintendent of pensions is a lady by the name of Angela Mazerel Stevens. She used to be a provincial civil servant. She's now employed with the Financial Commission. She's an ex-lawyer. No, she is a lawyer, sorry. And she has been superintendent of pensions for at least 10 years, I think. And she is now an employee of a Part 4 agency. So something like working for the Power Commission or the Workers' Compensation. They're at arm's length from a government department. They still report through a minister, through the Attorney General. And her organization is that organization you've been seeing lots of ads on TV for. Like, who's the guy? Is it John Barry who's the head of the board? And he's from St. John. So it's a bona fide government agency. And Angie, as I mentioned, was a lawyer, or is a lawyer.
And if I'm not mistaken, the agency, though, is a new creation as opposed to, so the superintendent of pensions wasn't always at as much arm's length as they are now. It's much more at arm's length within the past year than it used to be, but it is at arm's length. Yes.
I think I can talk loud enough you can hear me, okay?
Yep.
One of the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest jokes that I've ever heard in my life is a CPI. I wrote into Statistics Canada to get information on it. I got 12 pages, and you'd have to, liars can figure and figures can lie. And anyone that tries to tell me that your CPI in New Brunswick here is 0.96%, gasoline alone's gone up, even if you claim over 6%, it's more than that. Your taxes have gone up, your food's gone up, and I'm absolutely sure that if you figure the whole thing up, you've got more than 5% increase right here in the last year. And these guys are lying through their teeth and using a CPI to keep wages down and also to keep pensions down. And it is a cotton picking joke. I'd like to know your opinion.
Well, I think your comment about CPI and what's in that basket, because that's what it's supposed to be, is a basket of services that get to be compiled as your CPI, and I think it's only nominal effect to really deal with the whole cost of inflation is much higher than CPI. And gasoline is not in the basket of services with CPI. Neither are taxes, right? Assessment, property taxes aren't in there as well. Those are things, and I understand from somebody else, neither is like the cost of insurance, which has gone up. That's not in the basket either. So all those things are over and above what the basket says it should be. And those are the things we have to dig in our pockets for. So you're right, CPI does not cover what those costs are. Other questions? Okay, I want to thank everybody to coming today, and I want to say, please stay with us. Claire? Give the what? Well, we've just quickly, some of us have just quickly looked at the bill that was introduced yesterday, and although the base benefit on PSSA was guaranteed, the base benefit for teachers is not guaranteed in the bill right now, and neither is that we can see, although Cyril says that part may come in the MOU, there's no mention on the 75% as well in the teachers that we can see. A lot of the stuff is very similar to the retired public servants, so I think a lot of it, we're in the same boat. So, the teachers have hired 2 lawyers to develop the MOU, right? So they've got things going, they're doing the MOU, which will put some of the detail in, which you don't see in the bill. Yes, yeah. Okay, Don?
First of all, anyway, glad that, we got a number of people get out today. There's a lot of people that are not here, disappointed, I guess, in that. But I think on the legal issue, we've got a challenge right now. We donate to this legal fund. We can say, no, we're not going to do it, or we're going to support it. A lot of people say to me that, well, why am I going to donate to this if the lawyer is going to take all the money anyway? My answer to them is, what choice do we have? We have to have legal people represent us, and if we're not willing to make the donation, then, we stand to lose a lot. And I think for mostly everybody here, we've probably already donated to the legal fund, and it probably means that we have to donate again. I know I'm perfectly willing to do that, but I think we also have to be talking to a lot of the people that aren't here today and try to convince them to contribute to this, because it's for their benefit that we're doing it. If people go and do that, then I really don't know what else we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may just read something that one of our members, and I think it's important, that sent to us, and I'd like to read it here. This is about our pensions for sure, but there's also a much larger issue at stake here. Governments in a democracy must hold themselves to a standard that is at least at the same level as their constituents. Constituents have to honor their contracts and obey the law, and so should the government. This government has, in at least a number of situations, made a decision that they no longer want to honor some of their contractual obligations. They picked the ones they didn't want to honor and simply decided that they would no longer perform their part of the agreement. Even when they were told by the courts that this was illegal, they did it anyway. If a government operating in a democratic society is allowed to get away with simply deciding not to honor a financial obligation, who will be next? What other obligations will they decide not to honor? After they have done this a few times, they'll come to see this as a viable option to solve problems that they face. When that happens, and it will if they're allowed to get away with this, no organization will want to enter into a contract with them. Their contracts will become meaningless. The collective bargaining process will become meaningless because the government will just legislate themselves out of an article in a collective agreement whenever they like. So we've said, and I've said to others, we're the small fish in the big pond, and if we don't do something here, this is going other places as well. So we realize we need to turn to others to help us in that fight, but we believe it's worth the fight. Yes?
I wrote a letter to the Liberals and to the NDP party and asked them 2 questions. And they haven't gotten, well, I did get a response from the Liberals which said nothing, that I would get a response in the future, and I've not received an answer from the NDP party. I wanted to know how in any arrangement an individual or individuals could sign a paper not members of a bargaining group, who were in fact retired, no longer union members, what would give any individual the right to sign on their behalf? And I'm assuming that would be sort of the same thing with the teachers. And the other one was, what would they do if they get elected in September? Will they in fact rescind Bill 11, or what are their future plans? And I haven't gotten answers to either one of those questions from either party.
Okay, the good questions, and thank you for writing them. What we have, I have here a copy of the 2 resolutions that went and got passed at the Liberal Convention, so you can see those. Again, it doesn't mean anything till it's in a platform. The NDP have, from the beginning, said a contract is a contract, so they have basically not changed that stance. Now, what that means and how they'd implement that, should they be a successful party, is not known. But and your question on how could someone sign and obligate is a good legal question. And as you see on here, there are a number of fronts we can go on. That's a good one. So it's not one that we're oblivious to. Guy.
Yeah, Bonnie, you mentioned that I was a regional contact. I just want to say I'm going to be sitting at that table, and those of you who want to participate in the political action in the 4 or 5 ridings in our area, if you want to meet with me, your name and your email, I'll be able to contact you and let you know how we intend to proceed further. But I definitely need your help. So anybody that wants to, I myself is committed Tory. I've been with the Tories for a number of years. This just turns me on, as nothing else could turn me on, and that's why I'm involved. And one thing for sure, I will definitely not vote for your vote.
Thank you. So anyone that would like to help out in that front, please sign. So I don't see any other questions. I do say thank you very much for coming. Stay tuned. Keep watching the website. If you haven't filled in the form, be sure you do. That's the way you get our emails, so you know where things, and we'll be around here for a minute if anyone wants to ask a question one-on-one. Thank you.